Hey everybody, Dan here. Let me tell you about a new app called Poker Chill. So first, before I even tell you about it, just know this, the first 5 hours of play are totally free. 5 free hours of play. Just log in with promo code HOOPBALL, HOOPBALL. Poker Chill lets you play poker with your friends with built-in video chat. No more computers or second monitors to try to get your poker on. It's a perfect way to hang out remotely on a Friday night with your buds. It's as fun and real as live poker, but it's on your phone. You can play from anywhere. Your couch, a chair, lying on the floor on your stomach. It's high-quality video chat right in the game, and it's easy. Just 3 taps to set up for beginners. It's got custom controls for more advanced games if that's your thing. It's available on iPhone and iPad right now, web and Android coming soon. That's right around the corner. So get started now. Download the Poker Chill app. Start playing. Remember, first 5 hours. 5 stinking hours. Totally free. Just log in with promo code HOOPBALL, HOOPBALL. Poker Chill. That's the app. Check it out. You're going to love it.
Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Well, our betting leans have not been that outstanding so far. I'm going to fess up to that. Although, the unders hit all 4, actually. All 4. So that part, we've had under control. The sides, not so much. Clippers did not cover, going back to Tuesday. And then yesterday, neither underdog covered. So I thought it was going to be dogs and unders, and it turned out to be favorites and unders. But at least we got the total side right. Looking at a lot of that stuff. I think we're 500 or a game under 500. Doesn't matter right now. They're all leans. None of this stuff so far has been something that I would lay my own money on, but just wanted to continue to throw that out there, and we will continue to do so. I think the stuff that's a little bit easier are series prices, which, are starting to get more of those. A new one floats out every day, and the new one, although I guess that's actually not true, because yesterday was the 9-10 stuff, so nothing new today. We will have more tomorrow, though, because today... No, I'm wrong. There are no games tonight. What the hell? I thought Tuesday stuff would roll over. But Dan, get your act together, because the teams that lost on Tuesday are playing the teams that won yesterday. See, this is, figuring this out. I actually really like the play-in. I love what it's done to eliminate tanking in some capacity, or at least to make tanking easier to predict, much easier to telegraph. They telegraph it, and then we can kind of figure it out. And it's fun. I mean, these games are cool. They're interesting. But what I haven't figured out yet is how it has impacted the schedule on a day-to-day standpoint. Remember, the season used to end on Wednesday, and then the playoffs would just fire up over the weekend. Now the season ends on Sunday, and there's this mishmash where you got a Tuesday, Wednesday stuff, and then Thursday off, and then Friday's games, and then Saturday you actually roll into the playoffs. It's just not the teams that were going on Friday, etc., etc. You guys catch my meaning. Anyway, I'm figuring out the schedule side. Sorry, I'll get this right. No games tonight, but we can begin, I would think, to break down the games for tomorrow a little bit. Although, am I not seeing lines on these? I thought for sure there'd be lines on the games tomorrow now. Yeah, there they are. They're up. I don't know why they weren't. I think I needed to refresh. We had a power outage here last night, and I'm thinking that may have had something to do with it. I got to get all these websites I have open are pulled out of a cache right now. Open up the new ones, you jerks. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about tomorrow's lines today. Of course, it's also a lesson learned coming up today with Sports Ethos's, that's hard to say, it used to be easier to say hoop balls, with Matt Klauser of Sports Ethos right here, in-house, one of our up-and-coming writers. He's a stud, man. We'll get a lesson learned from Matt coming up a little bit later on in today's show, which is good because I want to get what everybody learned from this year. And there may be situations where we disagree. I don't know that that's necessarily coming today. I just think that at some point, someone's going to hit me with a lesson. I'm going to be like, no, I don't think that. I'm not on board with that one. That's why we got to talk to other people. You guys get stuck with my voice constantly. I'm not very good at having guests on the show. I used to be a lot better at it. That was when I had one child. Simple as that. That was when I had one child, and my day was not littered with shuttle runs to and from preschools and trying to do podcasts when a kid isn't napping in the other room. Like, the older one wasn't really napping a couple of years ago. I could just do a pod whenever I wanted at that point. Not so much. Not so much these days. Anywho, I'm Dan Vespers. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today. This is, of course, a Sports Ethos presentation. Love to talk to you guys on the socials, at Dan Vespers or at Ethos Fantasy BK. Shout out once again, by the way, the resurrection of the Sports Ethos Toronto Raptors podcast is complete. Danny Nolan, Danny and Kevin, they have brought it back to life. Thank goodness. That was a fun pod that disappeared. Was just sort of rolled off the grid in December, but it's back. Danny and Kevin, just in time for the playoffs, so the Toronto Raptors, the Raps cast here at Sports Ethos returns. You can check that out if you're a Raptors fan, listens to this show, at Ethos Raptors. And, of course, another shout-out to our buddy Joe Orico, who's got our Fantasy MLB Today podcast cooking for fantasy baseball season. It's basically this show, 5 days a week, but for baseball. I've been enjoying his social media work as well, trying to keep myself abreast of any changes going on in MLB. I'm really trying to keep my team going on fantasy baseball right now. My team stinks. I suck at fantasy baseball. Stick to basketball, Dan. Stick to basketball. Anyway, tomorrow's games. Hawks are in Cleveland to take on the Cavaliers. Hawks are 2.5-point road favorite. Open at 1.5. It's already up a little bit. Total started at 226.5. It's down to 223. Clippers, 4-point favorites at home to the Pels. That total also is coming down. And, of course, this is what you see as playoffs go on or even as play-ins go on. Totals come down. People start to remember, because the NBA season now, the regular season is a lot of fast-paced basketball. There's only a couple of teams out there that try to grind you to a halt. Just a handful. Most teams are opening it up, firing at will, transition, pull-up three-pointers, things like that. So you're talking a lot of that Phoenix Suns stuff from a decade ago. Longer. Good God. Decade and a half? Oh, my Lord. We're getting old over here. Teams are shooting in 7 seconds, basically, is what I'm trying to say to you guys. That doesn't happen so much in the playoffs or the play-ins. Hawks and Hornets got to within a half point of the total, so that one was pretty damn close. But everything else has gone under by... Didn't they all go under, or did one of the games on Tuesday go over? Now I got to go back and make sure I didn't say something dumb. No, they all went under. They all went under by a good, at least a couple of possessions, some more than that. Like Clippers, Minnesota, that was way under. And really the only team that has shot the ball well in a non-transition type of format was the Nets, KD and Kyrie. And Atlanta shot the ball well, but Charlotte didn't play any defense. Charlotte needed to be better. Everybody else, I guess New Orleans shot pretty well, but otherwise they had some weird little gaps. Like that game shouldn't have been as close as it was. I know the Spurs had more three-pointers and only turned it over 6 times. So they were able to get more shots up. But the whole point is these games, they're really hard to get good looks. The Hawks are going to be a huge public team in that one because the Cavs have looked really bad lately. It's hard not to take Atlanta by a few points on the road with as well as they've played down the stretch, as poorly as Cleveland played. I know it's the public side, but I would have to lean in the Hawks' direction. The Cavs have not impressed me of late, and the only thing that would steer me away from that game would be, aside from the fact that Atlanta's going to be such an intensely public club, is that the Hawks have not been good on the road. They're 16-25 on the road. They won 27-14 at home. Cavs are almost equally bad on the road. A little bit better on the road, maybe a tiny bit less. They're 2 games less strong at home, 3 games better on the road. Not that that matters in this instance. But we have to see, can Atlanta go get a road win? They've done a lot of their damage at home. Even down the stretch where the Hawks were playing well, the road wins they picked up at, the final 3-ish weeks of the season were over the Pacers and the Thunder and the Rockets. 3 teams attempting to lose. The Hawks' good wins down the stretch were at home. They beat the Hornets at home yesterday in the play-in game. They beat the Nets at home back on April 2nd. They beat the Warriors at home on March 25th. So they've sort of turned into a very Jekyll and Hyde kind of team. They beat the Grizzlies at home. I don't know if Ja was in that game. I can't remember, going way back, though. But, they lost to the Hornets on the road. They lost the Heat on the road. Those teams they lost the Celtics on the road. They lost to the Bulls on the road. They lost the Pistons in overtime on the road. They did beat the Wizards on the road also in there, and the Knicks. So, they got a couple of wins against teams that weren't actively trying to lose, although the Wizards is sort of debatable. And the Knicks, March 22nd, that's also a little bit debatable. How will the Hawks fare against a team trying when they're on the road? And that's the question mark tonight, and it's why this line is, presumably, staying somewhat low. Is there's disbelief, probably more on the non-public side of things, that the Hawks can shoot as well, play as well away from home. So I probably couldn't make a wager on the Hawks with them being this public of a team right now. I would look at the under, though. Again, I would look at the under. Cavs are going to play better defense than Charlotte did yesterday. Of course, these games again tomorrow. There's on Friday. And then the Pels and the Clippers, you also, again, kind of have to wonder about home court. I haven't been all that impressed with the Pelicans. They beat a Spurs team that got almost nothing from their best player. DeJounte Murray was just not good. Pels are 17-24 on the road. Clippers 25-16 at home. There is something there. And now that we have actual crowds in buildings again, it really does change the way the playoffs are going to go. Are we at all surprised that so far in this postseason, all 4 home teams have won? Will Hawks Cavs flip that on its head? Will Pels Clippers flip that on its head? Clippers covering 4 is going to be interesting because the Pels do have, I would argue, more firepower. But, the Clippers, we've seen them. They can play pretty well at home. They got a lot of interchangeable pieces. They have pretty good pieces to deal with a couple of the Pelicans' key guys. They can throw different things at Ingram and McCollum in a way that the Spurs kind of couldn't. Can Zubats deal with Jonas Valanciunas? Yeah, probably not as well as anybody, but well enough. So matchup-wise, Clippers pose a much tougher one for the Pels than the Spurs do, and just Clippers are a better team. I would look at the unders in all of these games again. I think when it's winner take all like this, or winner take almost all, as it was the last couple of days, games tend to grind a little bit. And then you probably look at the Cavs as a very short dog. Could they surprise somebody? I don't know. That it feels like betting the Cavs. You're trying to be the smartest person in the room. Might leave that one alone. And then the Clippers covering 4. I think they probably win. Do they cover 4? Not as easy as it looks. Not as easy as it looks. Friends, life can be a bit exhausting sometimes. You got work, 30, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. You've got responsibilities. Got to get your car fixed. Got to take care of the dog. You got kids. Heck, maybe even sometimes you might take a moment for your own hobby. Maybe you play a little golf. Maybe you like going to the gym. Maybe you play tennis. I don't know. Maybe you just play video games and watch TV. But the energy to do all of those, all of that ridiculous laundry list, can be a bit much sometimes. That's why I take M-Drive Start. M-Drive Start is a premium protein powder packed with 7 clinically tested ingredients that support energy, strength, and drive. And 6 premium protein sources for optimal recovery and digestion. That last one, very important for some. Every year it becomes more obvious that we're getting older. I'm very rickety when I go to bed at night and when I wake up in the morning. But that doesn't necessarily mean we need to slow down. Prioritize the need to take care of your health. So get M-Drive Start at mdriveformen.com and use the coupon code HOOPBALL, yes, our old name, HOOPBALL for 20% off your first order of M-Drive. You get free shipping and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Again, get M-Drive Start at mdriveformen.com with coupon code HOOPBALL for 20% off your first order, free shipping, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Guys, we are so pumped to introduce some of our new friends, Vincero Collective. If you don't know Vincero yet, they're a premium lifestyle brand out of San Diego carrying watches, sunglasses, and more, perfect for men or women of any style. Why do I love Vincero? They're modern, they're ethical, with the goal of crafting premium lifestyle accessories for those devoted to growth in any and all aspects of life. Health, wealth, community, whatever. Visit VinceroCollective.com/hoopball to get a special 15% off and free shipping discount just for our listeners. Again, that's VinceroCollective.com/hoopball. Vincero spelled Vincero. Their products are stylish, they're of high quality, they're eye-catching, they're modern designs. The watches are stainless steel, durable silicone, and Italian marble straps. For the glasses, all lenses are polarized. The frames are handcrafted, and because they know that online shopping can be frustrating, they have a 5-year guarantee and a 365-day free return policy. That's nuts, but you don't even need to take my word for it. They have over 30,000 5-star reviews. They've been featured in Forbes, Business Insider, and Newsweek, just to name a few. Go to VinceroCollective.com/hoopball. Get your 15% off and free shipping offer now. We have lines on game ones for Saturday and Sunday. We'll talk about those on tomorrow's podcast. Friday's show is going to be all about NBA series prices and weekend playoff games. We'll probably save our next lesson learned after today's, of course. We'll probably save the next one for Monday of next week if I'm planning this out in my head properly. Mostly because, what's the rush? We got a whole damn offseason to go right now. We're only on show 4. The prison wall here only has 4 little slash marks in it. Tomorrow we get to draw one of them delightful diagonal lines. All right, enough of this nonsense. Probably get into lessons learned today. And to that end, as promised a few minutes ago, I want to bring in our first guest of the offseason. You're breaking the seal on offseason, me not just talking to myself. The great Matt Clouser. What's going on, man? You're from right here at Sports Ethos. People should know you, and hopefully a few more will after this podcast. Good morning, by the way.
Good morning. What's up, Dan?
What
is up, fantasy freaks out there in the world? All my freaky sports ethosians.
So, Matt, you can follow on Twitter at Sumo Cartwheel. That is spelled exactly as you'd assume it is, SUMO, and the word cartwheel. That's a great... I don't know. Should I wasn't planning on asking about it, but can I ask where that comes from?
It's completely innocuous. My name is Matthew with 1 T, and that is just an anagram. It's just...
Whoa, really?
Letters jumbled up. Yep. Matthew Clouser, Sumo Cartwheel.
Are you able to do anagrams quickly? That always blows my mind.
I can do them okay, although that one I got carried away with an anagram solver.
What's anagram solver? I do
like to play all sorts of word games, yeah.
So are you... I have never played Wordle. Do you do the Wordle thing?
I do the Wordle. I do the Quirtle, which is 4 at once.
What?
Yeah.
Do you do Purtle?
Four boards at once. I do, of course. Yeah, of course I do Purtle. Yeah.
We're off and
No,
running.
no silhouettes on Pirtle. No way.
Man.
You gotta go raw.
Maybe I gotta try one of these things. Should I? Which one? If I was gonna start, which one should I start with? Because I'd be leaning towards Pirtle. Because if I know
Pirtle's
anything,
not-
it's
yeah.
it's NBA.
And that you get it's like, I think it's by team, conference, position, height, jersey number.
Oh, that's what those are the hints they give you.
So you can knock it down pretty easily, and you get 8 guesses. So really, I mean, you know everybody in the league. And they're not giving you they're not asking for Mamadi Diakite or they're more known players.
Yeah, though fantasy degenerates, I assume, would probably just dominate the crap out of that one.
I haven't got one wrong yet.
That always amazes me how folks can. I actually like. I'm more that way with numbers, I think, than letters. But it always amazes me when folks are able to pull an anagram together out of something with what were we talking about? Was that 13 letters? I lost track. Something like that. Yeah. See, I counted it pretty quick. See, I'm much better at counting than I am at rearranging letters. All right, Matt. Let's dive into lessons learned. Everybody's heard my first few, and I have plenty more. But it's time to talk to somebody else. By the way, the Sumar Cartwheel here that we'll be talking to, you write for us here at Sports Ethos. I hope that folks have checked out some of your stuff. You have the Snell game, which is one of your features. I want to talk about that before I let you go at the end of today's show.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's do a lesson learned. Hit me with your, I don't know, I guess we could say, I'm sure everybody's got a few, but what's one of the big ones for you? Let's break it down.
Well, I mean, I think after this season, we all have to agree that the most important thing is that you secure the number 1 pick at all costs because you cannot win without Nikola Jokic. But no, seriously, I think for me it was the idea of not getting too close to my own fantasy.
So what does that mean?
And what I mean by that is that, sometimes your best laid plans just have to be abandoned. You have to let them go. I wound up with Steph Curry, Michael Porter Jr., Jimmy Butler, Chris Middleton as sort of the core of one of my teams. And, MPJ shot like garbage and then got hurt. Chris Middleton shot like garbage. Steph was shooting like garbage. And I just thought, well, it's going to come around. It's going to come around. And I missed an opportunity to, right after the trade, or right after the draft, one of the guys in my league looked at our teams and he said, we're going to end up trading Steph and Nikola Jokic this season. And I had another opportunity to do it about a month into the season. And I was like, no, Steph's going to come around. And I never did it. And then wouldn't you know it, I match up with that team in the finals. He's got Nikola Jokic. I have no Steph Curry. And you can imagine how well that went for me.
Right. Now, I feel like yes, I want to break this thing down piece by piece because I think there's a lot there. At the back end of it, I don't think you can kick yourself that much because you didn't know Steph was going to have an actual month-long injury with 3 weeks to go in the regular season. That's a tough one to predict.
That's true. Yeah, you can't predict. There's no crystal balls for injuries.
Because he was largely healthy before that point.
Yeah, I mean, he was disappointing for what my expectations were just because his field goal shooting was down this year.
Right.
But, he did a lot of other great stuff. He was giving me a lot more defensive stats than I thought he was going to give me. But the larger point is and it's the same in drafts as how drafts go. It's the same when you're streaming or anything along the way, head to head on your weekend matchups. Just don't be afraid to get off the plan a little bit.
Yeah, so I
opportunity when they're there.
Totally agree with that sentiment. And one example I can pull from my own side, and I want to kind of use that starting point to now jump to how we can kind of apply this to people out there. For me, I had a team where, and we've had Adam King on the show a few times. He loves the punt bigs build, and so I tried that in a couple of head-to-head leagues this year. I ended up in way too many leagues. That's something I'm changing for next season because I couldn't keep track of any of them. As the year rolled on and guys got hurt or guys popped up on the waiver wire, there were bigs that emerged that when initially I was like, look, I'm punting bigs, but I picked them up anyway, even though they sort of didn't make sense for my team. And 2-3 times that happened over the course of a year, and all of a sudden I wasn't punting bigs anymore. So I feel like that kind of falls into that same thing. And like I got to the finals in that league because I won rebounds in one of my playoff matchups, a category that on draft night I was actively punting.
Actively avoiding.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I think you can kind of apply this to Roto as well, although maybe it's a little bit tougher because if you do end up with 4 guys that are bad at field goal percent, maybe that's a situation where you just kind of lean into it. But, what steered you? I'm trying to think of the right way to ask this question because I think you do kind of have 2 paths. Doesn't the road fork a little bit there where you ended up with 4 guys you thought were not going to be bad for your field goal percent, and then they all kind of were? So could you have gone into a punt? Could you have gone back the other way? How did you make the decision to say, you know what, I'm going to stick with this, and I'll just build around a team that's not as good at shooting as I thought they were going to be?
Right. I am pretty punt averse because it's just so hard to do it well. And there's so many things that, that it's out of our control. So I feel like anytime I punt, something ends up like exactly what you just said. Something comes through the back door, some opportunity that I wasn't prepared for.
Right, and then the opposite side too. Like, the thing I mentioned was kind of a good thing that happened. It could be what you talked about, which is Steph gets hurt, and all of a sudden the anchor, the piece that's supposed to drive this punt build, like I lost the guy that's going to win me threes every week, and now, I'm punting 2 categories. My margin for error becomes infinitesimally small.
Right, and so I ended up, leaning into assists punt in that league because I was a little low. Butler wasn't playing that much, and Curry, I didn't have too many other assisters. Middleton, did okay.
Yeah,
but when Middleton and Steph Curry are your number 1 assisters, you're not going to be great.
Right. Those 2 guys are what? Roughly 5 and 5, something like that. 5
Steph
and 6.
Had it close to 7 for a while. I think he dropped down towards the end of the year.
Yeah, 6.3.
Yeah. And then, but as part of that, I said, well, I don't need assists, so what I can make up for some of this field goal. And so then I just started picking up bigs and just trying to get as efficient big men as I could.
Did you feel like that then put you in a tight spot where you were only looking for guys that could cover the thing that was now going wrong?
It did, but if I have to stream something, my preference is to stream big men because there's always just a ton of guys popping up at the end of the year, sort of out of nowhere, even before silly season. Injuries happen, and these guys who are just going to thump they're really going to help the field goal percentage. They're not going to give you any turnovers. I really don't play for points anyway, so I'm trying to win percentages and defensive stats and turnovers. That's my 5.
Sounds like you're talking about a Roto league right now, but I know you're not.
No, well, I've played mostly Roto. Lately, we're playing head-to-head.
And that's probably why you have that strategy built in, because you're talking about a lot of head-to-head players. They kind of throw the percentages up in the air and say this is a coin flip a lot of the time. But if you're targeting them and you're actually good at them, I mean, they still are probably the easiest categories to win because a lot of folks aren't paying attention to them.
Right, they aren't. So I feel like if you get those covered and you keep your turnovers low, everybody's punting turnovers.
Everybody, yeah. Oh my God! So don't even get me started.
Then you
on
have
that
to figure out how to beat your opponent in only 2 extra categories per week besides those 3, because most teams are going to give you those 3.
I feel like you just sort of presented this is like the Moneyball iteration of fantasy basketball punt strategy.
Totally.
No, because nobody, right? You're looking at what everybody's doing, and you're saying, if we just do this thing, we've now made the easiest path possible. I feel like, okay, look, can we plant a flag on this one? You and I need to go join a free league next year, so we don't really have to focus that hard on it, but just join like a free head-to-head league, Yahoo free, whatever, and run this strategy and run the opposite, basically, of what everybody else is doing, and see how it goes. If you were gonna, If you were going to attack the percentages and turnovers, what are the other two categories you would probably hunt? Is it defensive stats?
Yeah, I mean, those are the hardest to get, right? So if you can, I mean, that's the dream team. You shoot great, you get blocks, you get steals, and you don't turn it over.
Yeah,
I mean,
and you don't need any volume guys for that.
Yeah, I mean, give me I want 5 Michael Bridges and I want 5 Herb Jones.
Yeah, and like Chris Paul and the Time Lord could sort of round it out.
I guess you got to have exactly one guy who just give me a Rudy Gobert and give me a Jaren Jackson Jr. and call it a day.
You could throw like DeMar in there if you want to power boost the percentages. You can have one scorer. That's it, just one. Where then everybody else is like, well, yeah, they're not great at field goal percent, but they take 4 shots a game, and DeMar's taking 20, so
exactly
he'll counterweight that pretty well. This is interesting. I think we need to put this into practice a little bit more. So
I tried it actually halfway through the season. I got into a Yahoo league, and I forgot the draft, and I auto drafted.
Nice job.
Which is another lesson learned.
Yeah,
don't auto draft. Do not auto draft. But I applied this strategy and I finished as the 3rd seed.
Interesting. With guys that you didn't even attempt to draft.
Yeah, well, I worked the wire. I broke all the rules and used all of my 4 roster moves every week early just to acquire those kind of players. And I ended up losing. I had Campaign. He got hurt in the first round of the playoffs. I lost that matchup by 1 assist.
Wow. Okay, I need you. Yeah. Can you do a little ditty on this on Twitter?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear how that broke down. Like who got auto drafted? Because I don't reading the names off.
And look at it, but
yeah, I was going to say, and then reading the names off verbatim on a podcast is probably not the world's greatest entertainment. But
it was like Damian Lillard,
who was already out at that point.
Ben Simmons.
Oops.
It was just a terrible team.
And somehow you managed to turn that into a playoff roster.
Yep.
Or we're talking
playoffs. Never give up.
That's right. So I would love to see on Twitter who you got auto drafted and then some of the key moves you made to get to the build that you were looking for. Because I think that this is, if we can kind of perfect this route, I don't know. It just feels like that's an avenue that's open now and kind of staying ahead of the game. Matthew, the Snell game. I don't want to let you go without talking about your baby over here at Sports Ethos. What's the Snell game, and why should people be checking it out?
The Snell game is, I'm trying to straddle real life and fantasy, the dichotomy, talk about players who are doing good things and players who are good, who are not helping your fantasy team, and trying to have a little, poke fun at the world of analysts a little bit. I have a lot of I call it the circus of fantasy foretelling and statistical anomalies. So, of course it's inspired by the god Tony Snell, who, most famously had that 28-minute game where he didn't record any stats.
That was magical.
Missed shots, magical. He also has a perfect game on his record too, a game where he had no turnovers, made all his shots. So, but he's I think he's sort of just the perfect player to name it after. Obviously the works for a good pun, but because he's a great basketball player. He's a dead-eye shooter. You want him on your team. He's a great defender, but you don't want that guy on your fantasy team.
Have you heard of Whack Fantasy?
I have heard of Whack Fantasy. I've kind of wanted to do it, but I've never done it.
Yeah, I haven't either. It sounds amazing. A whole team of Tony Snells and the ghosts of Shane Battier. I cannot wait. This sounds like a magical time. Okay, so here's what we're doing. Yeah. Here's the plan going forward, because also we lost about 7 to 8 minutes of audio on a computer glitch. Matthew, I'm tasking you with going to Twitter at Sumo Cartwheel. Go follow him immediately, post haste. Sumo Cartwheel, anagram. Your brain is crazy. Let us know a couple of things. One, that auto draft you were talking about, and then really how you got from a team that wasn't at all what you were trying to do to one that was. And then the first team you talked about with Steph and Middleton and MPJ, how did you turn that team from one where you had particular targets into one where you kind of had to change what you were attacking after draft day, even though you got a bunch of the guys that you were attempting to get? So it doesn't have to be today. I don't know what your schedule looks like. By the time people listen to this podcast, it'll likely be later in the day anyway. But at some point in the next, let's say 48 to 72 hours, you got a deep dive in you on some of your moves this year?
Yeah, I'd love to do a deep dive on a couple of those things because they're one, it's just the lessons in how not to give up. Why not to give up?
You had another lesson that got cut off, and I'm going to talk about it a bunch next week, but I want to make sure I give Matthew his credit on this one. And that other lesson is it's all about watching the games versus the box scores. And I know that you're very much a watch the action because you can stay a week ahead of folks that don't actually do it. And I'm not going to say the same thing I did before we got cut off because it ended up sounding like an advertisement for League Pass. But if you get ExpressVPN, which is one of our partners, and you can watch any game you want, how about that for an advertisement? Matthew, if you are now officially, this time with the computer working properly, off the hot seat, may you enjoy the rest of your day without any technical issues.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I appreciate it. And look forward to talking to you soon.
Oh, it'll be soon because we're going to talk about some of the results from these things you've been discussing. We'll talk during the off season here. We've got things to discuss going into next year when we go try our hand at some of these kind of backwards basketball Moneyball builds. The plan is out there, my man. The plan is out there. Thank you again, dude.
You're welcome. I got that Joffrey Laverne story coming.
Maybe we can throw that. We'll throw that on the next podcast. Thanks, Matt. The great Matthew Clouser. Really happy that he's with us here at Sports Ethos. Another terrific mind. You guys got to check out the Snell Game. Seriously, it's a great read. It's fun. There's a certain, and a lot of the writers here at Ethos have a thing that I haven't seen as often, and I've seen it sometimes at other sites. So I don't want to say that nobody else has it, but there's just a flair. There's a flair to the writing that you guys got to check out. It's a love for basketball. It's a love for stats and fantasy stuff that just makes it fun. You know, we have Josh Millman on this show a lot. He's another guy that we're like, right off the top of my head, I'm like, this guy's got that certain flair. Because for me, like, I do mostly all my own fantasy research. So when I read something, I want it to be something that's just a little bit fun and not the dry stuff that a lot of websites are churning out. So Matt's been amazing. Really happy that he's with us here at Sports Ethos, and we'll be talking to him soon. I do also want to pursue this avenue because I think, and it's not going to be simple. It's going to require a lot of focus. I think it's going to require some practice. But I think we might be now a couple years ahead of the fantasy landscape actually kind of pivoting back, or I don't know, back, that's not even the right word, pivoting in this direction. Because if this works, 4 or 5 years ago, punting was only free throws. Think about the evolution of the punt. First, people punted free throws because that was a really easy one. You could just take like Dwight Howard, Shaquille O'Neal, whatever, 15 years ago. You just take them and remove the downside, and you turn a guy who was, with Dwight, with the free throws, he was whatever he was, like top 80, but without him, he was a first rounder, basically. Just one thing that you had to get out of the way. But then that has evolved over time. Punt assist teams have become really popular these days, because there aren't that many mega assist guys. So if you just don't worry about that, punt field goal teams have become crazy popular these days because the high volume dudes that are doing all the stuff, but chucking, they are very easy to come across, and they tend to be kind of fun to watch because they're always doing things in the games that you're looking at. Oh, my guy got 34 points today. Yeah, but it took him 28 shots to get there. If you don't have to worry about that, that makes it more fun for a lot of people. But I do think that what Matt brought up as sort of tangential to his, don't stick to your plan point, but maybe even the more interesting of the two things we covered on today's show, which is, hey, if you if you look at the categories that everybody's kind of throwing up into the air, like, the Jimmy Butler stat sheet meme where he looks at it and just kind of flips it up, whatever, that's 3 categories now. People are flipping up in the air in head-to-head leagues, both percentages and turnovers. Now, every once in a while, in those head-to-head leagues, you're going to run up against a team that's actually attacking field goal percent or free throw percent. So that one's going to make it a little bit tougher for you, and so maybe that one goes the wrong way. But if you're also very good at the defensive stats, and if you happen to be kind of okay at like most of the things that are not straight volume, like scoring and threes, you've got a chance to still win those weekly matchups. And I think that's where some of the little tweaks are going to come into play. And I think it's probably why we need to try this out a little bit. But there is an avenue there where you're now like 3 out of the 5 categories you can kind of walk into a lot of the time. It's a strategy that I've applied heavily in roto formats, but not as much in head-to-head. So thank you to Matt once again for coming on the show. I am Dan Vespers. Tomorrow, we're talking betting over the weekend. Playoffs and betting on Friday shows these days. We'll dive back into lessons learned on Monday. You guys already heard one of the ones for next week. It's going to be about watching the game, what you can learn from your eyes versus the boxes, or both. And then we got plenty more to talk about as well. We'll try to get some more guests on the show. These are always fun because it brings new things into focus that I hadn't even really thought about. At Sumo Cartwheel, that's Matt. I am at Dan Vespers on Twitter. This is Fantasy NBA Today, a Sports Ethos presentation. Talk to you tomorrow.
Underdog Fantasy is the fastest-growing fantasy app and easiest place to play fantasy sports. Just jump on UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app, draft your team, and that's it. And if drafts aren't your thing, they also have a pick'em game where you can win 20 times your money in a single night. Use promo code RADIO, and Underdog will double your first deposit when you sign up with up to $100 in bonus cash. Deposit $100, get $100 free. That's promo code RADIO. Terms and conditions apply.